You might not think of it initially, but national security interests can be quite closely linked to the types of mitigation and adaptation efforts that we've seen so far today. And the national security providers in the military don't have the luxury to potentially politicize some of the issues. They have operational demands and they have resources that they have to use to try to meet those demands and to be able to try to get the best and most robust information about what the challenges are that they're likely to see in the policy and prediction space that I talked about earlier today. And there's been a number of different reports, both from like the Climate Council here and other private think tanks or private organizations, as well as with, like for the readings today, from the defense establishment of the US, Australia, and in other countries around the world. They're trying to understand where the challenges are, what their missions are likely to be going forward, and how they should respond to them. And I think just this Climate Council report was interesting in trying to summarize the challenges ongoing in recent years, as well as what's likely to happen in the future. They also have better infographics than the government report, so that's why I'm using them here. So you have the climate change risks to the ADF, both in capabilities and geostrategic, that can affect preparedness or the kinds of missions that they go on. This kind of shows the recent missions that are connected to climate change that have put the ADF under pressure, including, of course, responding to the wildfires, cyclones, other types of natural disasters of the types that we've talked about in recent weeks. And then this report was also quite critical of the ADF. This is now a couple of years out of date, but how well the ADF has thought about and tried to plan, to test, and to prepare for these challenges compared to the US and the UK. And of course, one of the takeaways from this report is that the ADF is less prepared than the other two states, and that the US military has more of an issue and a focus on these things than the UK or Australia. Although, of course, as one of the videos makes clear, the US military is also tasked with a lot more demands domestically and internationally, with military bases in over 100 locations outside the US, as well as a budget that dwarfs any other military's budget around the world. The Australian military specifically launched a number of different initiatives and planning efforts, starting in 2011 to raise awareness in the military, develop integrated energy strategy, and trying to link the military more with business and academia to try to come up with mitigation and adaptation solutions, pushing towards more green procurement, something also you could see in the U.S. efforts, and a recognition that the military is going to be tasked more in responding to natural and man-made disasters of the types that we talked about last week. And last week I also talked about how that could be politically sensitive for some militaries to go into certain countries, and how the militaries are often are by policy, either governments have a reciprocal agreement to agreeing to allow the support personnel from other countries' militaries in their territory, or to prevent them from doing so. And often it can be an ad hoc situation, or there could be tensions in the destination state and whether they're likely to be invited in. All this connects to larger national strategy. I know a number of students here take international security classes, and I think this connects to these kind of broader, big policy kind of debates that hopefully would be of interest to you. I wasn't able to try to find a more recent national security strategy than the 2013 report. The Department of Defense had a more recent study, but as a kind of government level national security strategy, I wasn't able to really find one more recent than 2013. The one before that was in 2008. The U.S. also saw sea changes in the national security strategy that George W. Bush released after 9/11 compared to the one that Clinton had in the 1990s. Similar with the Obama administration after George W. Bush, it was an overall strategy document that outlines the challenges the country faces and the way that the country is going to respond to those challenges and to those states that might potentially threaten them. I think this is relevant to this class for the relative, for how they define the national security risks. And you can see here that you have the main kind of protect and strengthen our sovereignty, safe and resilient population, secure our infrastructure institutions, and an overall international environment. The risks are foreign interference, developing and fragile states, which connects to the themes of the class, cyber activity, weapons of mass destruction, organized crime, state-based conflict, and terrorism and violent extremism. And then the pillars of the national security kind of relate to those as well: counterterrorism, border integrity, the Australian and U.S. Alliance there, and understanding and being influential in the world, especially in our region. What hopefully you should notice here is that you really don't see the climate anywhere there. It does come into the overall broader challenges that they include after resource security and scarcity. And it's only mentioned 4 times in the entire report in 2013. And you can have this, compare that with the Defense Strategic Update in 2020. The only mention that I could find of climate change was on page 16, as it connected to threats to human security. In the region, pandemics, growing water and food security, population growth, urbanization, extreme weather events, all the things that we've covered in the last couple of weeks. The Australian Defence Establishment also kind of recognizes that as well. Moving more just to the effect that it might have on the broader population, reservists are more likely to be called up to duty to respond to bushfires, natural disasters, and coronavirus crises. And there's kind of a response to that in focusing on mitigation in order to try to prevent these kind of challenges and the defense establishment being forced to respond to it. Of course, this is by former ADF chief. The ones that are in office, of course, have to deal with interpersonal realities and political realities that the impact of their words might be less kind of dramatic. That leads me to my third lecture question. There's been increasing calls for a new national security strategy. There might be one that I'm not aware of. If so, let me know. But as they go forward, would you think about what you think would be included? Would you include climate change as one of the key national security risks? Or is it more of a background condition according to the last 2013 report? Why or why not? Explain your thought processes with that. And then we'll turn to the US's efforts to try to mitigate and to adapt to similar kind of pressures, but with a different kind of resource base to be able to do so, as well as a different kind of political challenges as well. So let's turn to that now.